Sunshine. 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 Whoa, it does feel good.
It does feel good, especially in the heat of summer. When legislators aren't in session, but you still got all kinds of government action happening across the states and city governments and county governments. So obviously we want to do what we can to help spread some sunshine because it is the best disinfectant out there. And to do just that, we have full disclosure with the Better Government Association and their investigative news portion, Illinois Answers. From that organization, Bryan Zarou joins us via Zoom. Bryan, thanks for taking time this morning. Tons to tackle. Good morning. How you been? I can't hear you. I think you're on mute, Bryan. Yep. That's so.
Can you hear me now?
That is so 2020. That is so 2020. Come on.
Oh man, I'm embarrassed. Just to clarify. Just to clarify, Greg, too, I'm not with the Illinois Answers investigative team. I'm the director of policy at the BGA.
My apologies. I thought you were with Illinois Answers, but we will promote Illinois Answers.
Of course.
Great way to get some detailed information about what's going on in state and local governments. But Bryan, let's get to it because there's tons to get to, especially when it deals with government. And I wanted to start with the big news yesterday. Of course, AFSCME is the largest state union for state employees in the state of Illinois. They had a contract that expired June 30th. We did hear from Governor J.B. Pritzker shortly thereafter saying that there was a deal that came together. He didn't want to give any details at the time, but we got those details yesterday. A 4-year contract. We're looking at nearly 18% raises over those 4 years. Estimated cost more than $620 million in additional cost just for the AFSCME employees. What are some of the other elements of this particular measure that taxpayers are expecting to pay for?
Absolutely. So in this deal, they came to an agreement. They have they went from 10 weeks to 12 weeks of parental leave. They've negotiated ways in which they can help streamline vacancies and retention efforts. As we all know, both in for-profit, nonprofit, government work, it's very tough to retain employees and to hire employees. They're also doing something. Finally, they're doing something with electronic hiring, electronic paperwork. They're going to have a deal on that as well. And I would be remiss to say that this was actually negotiated during the state budget as well. So what the governor's team has come out and said that the cost of this has, they took that into consideration when doing the state budget. So I'm not sure how much of an additional cost, but it looks like it was all done together, which smartly so.
Yeah, and especially if there's not a huge surplus, and there were concerns that if this thing goes over $300-some-odd million for the first year, that could cause a need for some kind of supplemental appropriation, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case at this point, especially if the state keeps on reporting higher tax receipts month after month. So, again, $620+ million estimated cost over 4 years, $200 million of that expected just in this first year that started July 1st. But obviously, that's just one of the big news items when it comes to these contracts. And do you think that this is something that could be hashed out more in advance so there's not that uncertainty over 28 days from when the contract's supposed to be implemented?
So from the way I've been following this, I think the agreement was happened months ago. I think this was already set and sealed, but I think they wanted to wait for this because I also think they wanted to coincide this with the non-strike agreement they created for the city of Chicago when it comes to the Democratic National Committee coming to town next year. So I think this was good news because if you notice, the rollout happened day after day. So it was a good PR situation by the governors.
Yeah, and yesterday you had the governor and other prominent Democrats with labor leaders in Chicago talking about no strike agreement heading into the 2024 DNC up in Chicago. So big things happening there. Bryan, I definitely want to talk about FOIA here coming up. It's an important tool that needs to be strengthened in a lot of areas. But before we get to that, let's talk about the process not a lot of taxpayers know about. The Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. It's a bipartisan group of equal parts Democrats and Republicans from both the House and the Senate. They essentially review administrative rules crafted by administrative agencies, and they don't necessarily approve rules, but they can suspend or block rules. They had a pretty contentious meeting last week dealing with DCFS rules concerning daycare centers and how long a teaching assistant can monitor kids under the age of 2. They had a big, long conversation about the subsidies for undocumented migrant health care, and it was revealed that it could run out, what's budgeted, $550 million. It could run out by this fall. Plus, they had concerns about pollution control rules that JCAR indicated the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency slow-walked from 2015 to 2022, and it could lead to a loss of federal funds. If you could, talk about why JCAR is so important, and when we see these types of things pop up, why people need to be paying attention.
Absolutely. JCAR is a committee that was created in 1977 that really takes into consideration that's a bipartisan committee, 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans. And what they do is they look for any sort of overreach or any sort of something that's not inconsistent with the law that was created by the legislature. So this DCFS rule came up. There was not a permanent rule, but during COVID, they were having trouble filling spots in daycares. So they allowed assistants, people who weren't licensed, let's say, watch children under 2 years old. JCAR, and whether we agree or not on how much they overreach, and they said it was a threat to the public interest. So they said they couldn't do that anymore. Daycares could not do that anymore. But what they did was they suspended the rule for, I think, 45 days so that DCFS can come to the table, have permanent rules on the board. And it looks like they'll come to an agreement on that. But JCAR is important in many ways. But sometimes I think they may be overreaching depending on who the governor is at one point. But besides that, you also had things like the pollution board. That rule was from 2015 to 2022. It was slow walk, but also there was a lot of confusion in between, right? In 2015, there was a rule. And then in 2017, I think when President Trump took over, they suspended those rules, didn't create new rules. But there was a portion of that where our federal funding could have been at risk. But it looks like if we didn't comply with that rule for 24 months, then our federal funding would have been at risk. But it looks like it's all taken care of now.
Yeah, and they'll obviously revisit all of these issues next week, or rather next month, when they have their next JCAR hearing here in Springfield. So we'll be watching that closely. Bryan Zarou with Better Government Association joining us. It's Full Disclosure. Bryan, got to take a break, but coming back, let's talk about FOIA, the importance of FOIA, and how you guys think that FOIA can be strengthened in the state of Illinois. So stay with us. Bryan Zarou with Better Government Association here on WMAY with Full Disclosure. I'm Greg Bishop, and we got more coming up right now, though. 8:49 from Culver's West on Wall.
Sunshine, 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 sunshine. Whoa, it doesn't feel good.
And we're back with the Better Government Association's Bryan Zarou here with Full Disclosure on WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 Springfield's Springfield's News and Talk. Let's talk about FOIA. Of course, it's very useful to be able to get access to police reports. It's useful to find out how much your school board members spent on dinner for the whole group that went to a junket somewhere. It's important to find out how rules are being filed and so on. But Bryan, there's a lot lacking when it comes to FOIA in Illinois. You're actually looking at the possibility of the state legislature tackling this even further. What are you guys proposing here?
Absolutely. There's a couple different things. There's first our Court Transparency Coalition, which will try to make the courts subject to FOIA. In Cook County alone, there's over 2,000 administrative staff that have nothing to do with the courts that you cannot find, that are shielded from FOIA. You can't find out what contracts they're signing, what they're getting paid, rules and regulations. Can't find any of that. So we're trying to do that. But the other thing is, too, something new that we're trying to do, and we're working with other states that have it, is trying to create a subcommittee in either the House or the Senate. That way, whenever there's any sort of FOIA legislation, when a legislator creates a law or creates a bill on anything that has nothing to do with FOIA, and at the last line of his bill or her bill says, this is exempt from FOIA, we see that a lot in the legislature, right? And it has nothing to do with FOIA. So any type of those bills would try to go to that subcommittee, and hopefully that would be a preventative measure as well, so they don't add those type of those amendments to the bill. So that way, we don't have any more limits on FOIA.
If you could talk a little bit more about the courts not being open to the Freedom of Information Act, what kind of detriment is that to taxpayers? Not just with the county level courts, but even, for instance, the Judicial Inquiry Board. From my understanding, that as well is exempt from FOIA. Why is that detrimental to the tax-paying public?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you can't find out something, when you can't find out the kids in juvenile detention centers, you can't find out how many kids are in there, how they're being disciplined, what they're eating, what kind of rules and regulations are in place to keep those kids safe. You can't find any of that. We are one of 6 states that do not have that do not have court FOIA, judicial FOIA. We're working with the legislature to try to get this done. We're working with the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts, who unfortunately are against the bill, but we're doing everything we can. Like I said, we're an outlier. Illinois is one of 6 states. There's 44 states that have some sort of access to court records and court information. We're a complete outlier, and that's what we're going to try to make happen in veto session and also in January next year.
Bryan Zarou with Better Government Association with us. And again, if people want more information about FOIA, where can they find that? Because going through the state statute, ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, we actually have on our bettergov.org, we have how-to section where you can find out how to file a FOIA, where to find FOIAs, and it gives you a really good step-by-step direction on how to FOIA any sort of government agency you're looking for.
And it's extremely important. Everybody has the power to FOIA. It's not just something that's open to the media. All taxpayers have the ability to file Freedom of Information Act requests, mostly. But as we heard, the court system exempt from that. While you can access, court filings and whatnot, the inner workings of these governmental organizations really is what people need to get access to. Bryan, give us more detail. Of course, Better Government Association, where people can find that, but also tell us briefly about Illinois Answers.
Absolutely. BetterGov.org for the policy section of our team, and then IllinoisAnswers.org to hear all the investigative journalism our news team is also producing.
Bryan, greatly appreciate it. We'll definitely talk again in the near future, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop. That's all I got for you today, and I'm looking forward to sitting back with some popcorn here in a bit and watching and listening to this UFO House committee hearing over in Washington, D.C. That's about to start up here just in any moment. Oh, boy. Can we file a FOIA for UFOs? Or would that come back as like some kind of state secret or something? I don't know. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow, bright and early, 6 to 9, weekday mornings. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on